today, many Ghanaians wonder how we ended up in this kind of situation. Because one of the things you keep doing whenever you come here is to calculate the amount of money that has come to this government. But there are those who also point out that when you calculate those money, you're also talking about loans that were taken by the government. So how do you reconcile the two? Okay, you said a lot of resources has gone to them, but it's the same resources that are breaking our neck. Where did they fail?
You see, as a nation, when we discovered oil, and anytime I say this, sometimes our opponents are quick to jump and say that, yes, the vision was partly President Kufuor's. And there's some element of truth in it, because Because first of all, the PRMA, which is the Petroleum Revenue Management, was debated vigorously in Parliament. Some of the conditions that are there now came from, tabling from the other side, because the Ms. Mahama administration was then in power. But the long and short, what I'm saying is that we all agreed that we had come to the end of HIPIC, or at the time coming to the end of HIPIC, and our debt was rising. We were struggling to pay arrears. By the time we took up back then, when Ms. Mahama came in, that single spine was a big issue. And we were borrowing to pay, scrapping, expanding tax reforms and things, formation of GRA and the rest. So we could raise money, but there was a element of borrowing. So in our collective wisdom, we said, when the oil revenue comes in, because it is new to the budget, we must also use it to address areas which we don't have in the budget, but which has been or have, but it's not adequate. So, one, we say crisis is inevitable, whether it's global financial crisis, whether it's a Great Depression, and fast forward, whether it's COVID. Now there's impulse. It's not gone as widespread as COVID. So let's prepare what is called counter-cyclical policies. Because we know if cocoa prices go up, we are good. When cocoa prices go down, we're going to, and sometimes that is not because of factors I can say today, but simply because the US economy is down, less chocolate is eaten, whether the bar or the drink and all those. The advanced economies who buy our goods. So there's a depression. Everybody is serving to them. So why don't we put some money aside, as we didn't do with cocoa when the times are good? In fact, Cocoa Board was going to do a buffer, what you call a buffer, so that when the times are bad, then you can fall on the buffer that you created. So that's a stabilization fund. There's a collective, wisdom of everybody. Then we said if the stabilization fund is going up, and thank God we don't have a major crisis, right? Then let us cap it. And when we cap it, we must use it to reduce our debt, because HIPIC and others have told us that debt is a vulnerable area of the economy. True, it was good until the crude oil prices fell. So when it was good, we set it up. That's the sinking fund. We know, I've spoken about it, how it was used to take off part of the first sovereign bond. The borrowing, for which we were not paying the principal, we were paying only interest. So we started writing down the principal. The third element is, let's put some money aside for future generations, which is the heritage fund, which was going to be used to finance, current expenditure on education. But for many Ghanaians opposing it, right? So the question is, if these things were beginning to work for us, as I said, particularly taking off the first sovereign bond, I don't want to be too partisan because that's an NPB bond, which we took off because we wanted to borrow to do infrastructure. And whether it's an NPB bond or not, we will get to an unsustainable debt limit. And we cannot, do our work. But there's an understanding. So we put it aside. So the question is, why stop it? And so if you ask me about the vice president, that's the question. Why stop it? Why stop these things? It's not like we are talking about the idea. Then of course we also had the idea. It came from President Kufuor. How did you practice it? Mm-hmm. We are sure how we practice it, right? So we know the story behind it. Capping of all kinds of funds, including increasing levies. Of course, if you are not prepared for crisis, when it comes, you borrow. Or in the case of government, you impose taxes, 20 plus, taxes, which are nuisance taxes. Completely, I had to use their word. Like ESLA, similarly, the other problem we had was Doomso. Right. So by the time the batch came, and the power was being gradually restored, the West Africa pipeline was fixed just when we were leaving, right? The government couldn't pay subsidies to VRA and the rest who were borrowing. So that's the idea of ESLA. Crude oil prices had fallen. So since they are falling from about $99, which we used to prepare the budget, to about 45, and then went down even close to 35 or so. And then it recovered in 2017. Those prices recovered in 2017 plus 3 oil fields. You see, so we created ESLA, and it was to last 3 to 5 years to pay off the energy sector debt. Today, as we speak, it's projected to bring in 66 billion because 3 to 5 years was ignored and it was extended. The rate was increased. It has bring in nearly 40 billion as we speak. So why haven't we paid at the bailout cost? Why haven't we? And when I talk about bailout cost, there's no energy. It's energy. Why haven't we paid contractors? Because the enhanced road levy was a separate bill that was added to ESLA. So there's an enhanced road levy, which was to pay contractors, which we started paying before we left office. And we negotiated VRA debt, and we were to do the IPPs. So why were all this stopped?
So the money was coming in but not being used for the purposes for which the money was?
Well, yes, but they have to. In fact, the money was coming in. It was so impatient that we can't wait for 3 to 5 years. So they took a loan to be repaid from the ESLA so that they can use the loan to fix, what I'm talking about.
But
that's what we call the collateralization of the loan.
But it did not fix the problem.
It was not applied. If it was applied, you wouldn't have IPPs being paid, in arrears today. Today, we are back to 2.2 billion plus, as Honorable Jinapo said, of the debt. That was the precise amount for which we were to do ESLA and clear. You can go to the Hansard. It's there.
But we spent the money.
Yeah, so, it was spent. So that's the question, right? The question you asked, the record is there. We started paying. We took a term sheet to pay the IPPs. Anybody can deny it. 600 million aphorism, loan to pay the IPPs so that the money will be paid, to the banks who had given the loans, to the IPPs, the loans to VRA, the loans to, So there was no reason whatsoever. So if you ask me, it's because of these anomalies. That's why we defaulted.
The fact that the loans were not being paid using the
fact that the sinking fund was stopped, the fact that the ESLA, which was called a nuisance tax, the revenues were not used as applied. I mean, the fact that so many things, contingency fund and all those things, all those buffers were left. They were not applied. The fact that 3 oil fields, the oil fields had become 3 instead of 2, 70,000 barrels against nearly 200,000. Today, as Honorable Jinapo said, even the output from those fields are going down. We sent all the investors packing.
But the jump is quite huge. From 120 billion, we are now looking at the debt of 700 billion.
Well, that's but it's not the if you want to link it, to whoever is the next administration, we, as we have been saying, are sure it will be the NDC. Then the debt statistics is there. It's in a review. It is a IMF program. By 2029, the estimate has gone to 2029. The debt is supposed to go down to only 68. And I say only 68 because 68, you are still not likely to have access to the markets. Yeah. You are still not likely to have access, to the markets. And that is a worry. because then your developments and things are all going to be, have a. And so here you have energy sector. Listen, this is what we are now talking about. That's why what I've said. The government says we are taking action to reduce the energy sector shortfall, improve transparency in ECG, collections, and payments. Waterfall, we are talking about it. Via the ECG revenues and things, which part of it were to be the PSP. You remember all those things, and MCC, which was to give the money, is out of the country. All right. And now we are saying continue to implement quarterly tariff, publish technical notes, for payment within 30 days, IPP payments under the revised cash waterfall. This was established. The only thing was to improve the collection.
Okay.
Now we're talking about it. It's not a new concept.
The cash waterfall.
It's not a new concept. Yeah, it was part of the energy sector reform and linked to the World Bank partial risk guarantee, which we got to bring gas, to produce the power. The gas processing plant has not been expanded. That's why I'm saying that, let's talk facts. Yeah.
But the other question.
So, but the point I'm making is that the indices are there, and I was looking for, I've tagged them, but I can't find immediately. There's concern. The program review, the last one, which they are coming now to discuss to see whether there's concern about our reliance on T-bills to finance the budget.
Oh, but because that's what we've turned to now.
Yes, but it's risky.
Well, what's the risk?
And it's not sustainable. Pardon?
What's the risk in using T-bills?
T-bills. What's the duration of a treasury bill?
I think I've seen, is it 90 days?
90 days. 91 days.
Yeah.
We take it to be 90 days. Average 3 months. After 3 months, you are supposed to pay. These were part of the reasons we did a refinancing with the World Bank 2015 bond to allow us to start paying down our debt. Because what was happening until we applied the sinking fund was, and it's happening now. So let's say that you need 100. Let me use simple numbers this month. So you do the T-bill. You are promising that in 90 days or 3 months, you will pay the 100. In 3 months, you don't have the money because the pressure is so big, right? So, but you need in the next quarter, 3 months is locally quarter. So let's talk about quarterly. So the next quarter, you need another 100. You haven't paid the previous 100, and you need another 100. So now you are borrowing 200. You are borrowing 200 for those who gave you the money the last time, right? And need their money back at the end of 3 months. And then you are borrowing for your new requirements.
Plus
so instead of 100, if you are paid down, instead of 100, you are paying 200. You are borrowing 200. The 100, which is for the old T-bill, is what we call refinancing. Okay. Or rollover. When you go to your bank and you say, oh, can you roll over? Because they know the government will borrow. So you tell your banker, please roll over and add the interest.
Okay.
You see where those balances and things. So now you have your debt increases to 200 because you haven't paid. Third quarter, you need 100. You haven't paid. Or even if you pay 50. So now you need 200. You need 300. 200 to pay the first one which you rolled over into the second and which you haven't still paid. So you have 200 arrears. So you borrow, and then you borrow for the current 100. So your debt now increases to 300. By the end of the year, the T-bill, assuming you haven't paid, let's just assume that you don't pay, the last quarter, you need the money, right? So let's say you need another 100. Let's just say schools have reopened and all that. No, so let's school feeding. Let's put that. Let's assume that it's still 100, right? Now you are going to borrow to pay the 100, the first one, which you couldn't pay off in the second quarter, which you are not able to pay in the third quarter. So in the fourth quarter, you add it to the previous two, and it's 300. So by the end of the year, you are borrowing 400, right? If you had been paying, the 400 would have been zero. Because every month you would have been paying. Or even if you have been paying half, your debt will be 200, which is better than 400. Assuming you were putting money aside, the money is not enough because the crisis is not over.
So we, as now, the IMF's concern is
yes, why the concern? The debts which is supposed, and remember, TBA has one of the highest rates, 30% plus. Yeah. So the debts, if we had borrowed long-term access to the market, the highest we did was 10.2, or even it became higher if you take the other bond that was done by the. But let's take it that, assuming even we borrow at 8%, if things were all right from the sovereign bond, if we did it 8.59%, compare it to 30% for the first one, 30% for the second one, 30% for the third, 30% for the fourth. You have turned, a short-term loan which you be paying at 30%, that's why it's expensive, into a long-term loan, 400, at 30%. And that's because you couldn't go to the market to go and borrow that 400. That's why the fund is saying that there's concern about the use of T-bills.
I see. But a question on this, on the matter of the funds. You've been following the first, second, this is the third review.
Yes.
So far, are we achieving the aims of which we went there?
We are achieving some. So okay, let me I hope I can get a page so that I read that it's not me we said. Right. So this is a staff appraisal. When the IMF comes, they tell you after you've given them the statistics and everything, the conditions you have to meet and everything, then they give you an appraisal. They give the country an appraisal, right? So Ghana's economy has proven more resilient than expected.
Okay.
Like we've been saying recently, the second quarter GDP was better than expected and whatever. So that's positive. Program performance has been generally strong, and whatever. That the fund has been using this language. Wow. Sometimes people disagree, with them. We don't have to agree. Looking ahead, perseverance in program implementation and further progress towards restructuring agreements with commercial creditors will be critical. You remember the loans things we were discussing? Yeah. So we haven't completed. That's why the celebration and whatever. We still not finished the commercial. That's why there was a lot of there was a lot of news coming out of London in the last 2 weeks ahead of the IMF coming. Yeah. Frantic efforts to get into that agreement because it's here, and we're supposed to have improved on this performance.
Okay.
Against this backdrop, staff welcomes the authorities' commitment to maintaining fiscal effort under the program. Is that not the original objective?
Yes.
Yeah. So they appreciate progress made, the effort to maintain. BOG is committed to maintain a prudent monetary stance is welcome, but more progress is needed to address the fund's safeguards assessment recommendations. If you win, this is what you are going to take over, unless, of course, this third review has improved the situation. Right. So let me go to the government's intention to increasingly focus on structural reforms to foster inclusive growth. These structural reforms, post-COVID and everything, they are there. So I'm reading to know that, they even when they say we are doing well, they use cautious language.
Yeah.
And all that. Yes.
Which means that there's a lot more needs to be done.
A lot more needs to be done. So the review now will let us know, what the next steps are. Whether we are actually, continue to do well, or not. And if you look at the numbers, we are supposed to increase our effort to increase taxes so that we reduce the borrowing and pay the outstanding debt. The tax as a percentage of GDP in 2022, the actual was 13.1. We were supposed to do, at the first review, it was 13.3. So slight improvement there. That's GRA. Okay, preliminary. But you see that it goes up to 14.8, 14.9, And then, okay, it was 14.5, 14.2, that's 2024, that's the review, and then the projection, right? Then it has to go up to 14.8 and go up to 14.9 in 2025.
14.9.
Yes, we have to increase it. It was to
You have
start
to
from
raise
13.
more taxes.
No, you can not necessarily raise more taxes. For example, the ITAS, which we've been talking about, ITAS, which is the GRA domestic tax system. It was phase 2 of ICAMS. ICAMS was what we call ICAMS now. You remember West Blue?
Yes. Yes.
You know, and all those single window. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was, then that's focused on customs. Phase 2 is, you know, ITAS, which was to be, you know, to tackle the domestic, you know, to automate GRA. It's not been done. And now it's, and that we were going to do that phase 2, right? So you don't have to increase taxes to reach these goals because already Kenyans are choking with tax.
Okay.
The number of taxes. So if you say you are going to reduce the number of taxes, then you must implement these reforms so that you can enforce compliance. Compliance is not only locking, you know, shops and the rest.
Okay.
Compliance, for example, if this is done, the ITAS, which we promised to do because it was our phase 2, when you bring in this computer and you pay VAT at the port, you pay VAT at the port. When you get advertising revenue, right? Assuming the computer is 100, you come and add your profits and you advertising and you expect revenue of 120, right? So you pay 10, right? You have added 20.
Okay.
So the VAT you paid at the port, you deduct it from the VAT that you are charging. You know, the advertising company is charging you all those costs. Sorry, the advertising that you are doing, right? For which you are charging VAT. And then you offset, you know, the VAT 10% on 120. 120 is 12. So in the 12, the 10 was paid already to customs. So you are allowed to deduct the 10 from the, you know, from the 12. But now you have moved and you are doing advertising not at the port, but, you know, domestic. It's no longer at the port. So if you claim, you know, so let's make it impersonal now. If you claim 11 instead of 10, you know, you are supposed to deduct 10 from 12, right? You're supposed to deduct 10, which you paid, from the 12, which you collected on advertisement. So you're supposed to pay what? The difference of what? 2.
Yes. If
you know that customs is weak, so GRA is weak, right? And you, instead of 10, you falsify. And you say, oh, the tax I paid is 11. How much I pay now?
1.
But this, if the customs information with your national ID now called tax identification number, were to be transmitted from customs into the domestic tax system, straight away they will know. Immediately you file, they know that what you paid was 10 and not 11. And now you're evading tax. So the importance of these reforms. So it doesn't have to always be
an increase in taxes, introducing more taxes.
Yes. Checking the evasion and avoidance.
Because they'd also suggest that anybody who inherit this economy will have no choice but to impose more hardships.
They have no choice than to complete the reforms. Similar to, that's our position anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. And similar to gift meals.
Okay.
We hear transactions being taken outside gift meals and all that. Because of that expenditure, you know, which was at 27, it's supposed to go down. And I'm reading from the IMF document to 21.
Okay.
But that 21 is in 2025. So be prepared. The 4% reduction, we'll wait for the review and see how far it's about 22, you know, percent now. You know, but so we are supposed to be further reducing it, right, by a certain number. And you see it's flat. So if you want to achieve your goals, you have to reduce further. Yeah.
A lot more work.
Yes.
We have to wrap.
And then yes. So yeah, before you wrap up, you know, if you take, let me point to one quick one. If you take external debt, okay,
okay,
because the debt is suspended, the repayment is suspended, not the entire debt.
Okay.
From 2025, especially 2026, 2027, 2028, those debts which were suspended, which is making it look like the debt performance is good, will come back and we have to pay.
Oh.
Yeah, the repayment starts from 2026, 2020. The only respite is 2025.
So the picture will change immediately you start paying your debt.
It's changing, it's in the document. We can continue with the IMF analysis some other time.
Wow. So at this point, things are looking good because we are not paying our debt. Exactly. Immediately we start paying.
Yes. Yes. To get a good picture, that's why we're moving to accrual accounting. Mm-hmm. You know, if your accountant comes and say, oh, our books are good. I went to the bank, you know, and and we have money in the bank. We have a 24 million. It's looking good. Okay, let's be modest. You know, we have some 4 million or 2 million, right? And it doesn't tell you that the electricity hasn't been paid or it's yet to come. Even if you are paying, it doesn't tell you that staff salary is yet to come. But he just deducts and he says, we are good. We have this money. You get a looter here, right? Mm. If you go and spend that money and then come the end of the month, you can't pay. You go and borrow to pay the salaries. Because you tell you have money, you are spending. So the debt is only suspended. So if we were doing proper, you know, we would have added the commitment. That's why we say the budget is of commitment or the arrears. You know, we would have added to expenses, deducted for revenue to know your true position.
So, question to those of you in opposition. Simple question. In doing your analysis and putting together what you do immediately when you're elected into power, did you factor into the whatever you are seeing?
That's why I'm telling you all of this. We have to factor it into it. And let me say, addressing Ghanaians, you know, the two parties, I say, no, the entire PNDC, ERP, SAP was about corrections. You know, from those, you know, Rollins Chain and all those, Kalabule and all those, which was completely derailing the economy. And as I was, and again, then HIPIC, right, that was going up. You know, single spine was done without implementation. Who inherited it? Was it not Professor Mills? You know, to the point where Mills, you know, Emisada said, we are no longer going to be boring. We went to who sat down with labor and everything, and today they are going to strike again. Right. And then we left all the buffers and everything, and then now we are in debt. So you see the cycle I'm trying to paint? Yeah. So quite apart from assuring Ghanaians that we have the experience and we are looking at what's going on based on the fact that, you know, our opponents always leave problems to be resolved. So we have to be realistic and incorporate and begin planning for all these things.
So you are, all these struggles is so that you inherit problems to solve.
And then we become the problem solving party. I've showed you the history, right? Yeah.
From the PNDC era through the NDC era, all the way to where you are now.
Yes, and immediately we stabilize, we leave buffers, we leave a good economy. Sometimes, you know, like crude oil prices, it hits us and our opponents come and they say it's no performance and all that. And they come, 3 oil fields, gas processing plants, the signs for growth, you know. So they take over and we all know where we are. So it's time again to solve problems.
I see. Honorable Seth Terkper is one
Sorry,
finance
we couldn't
minister.
take questions.
We'll make time and do that. It's one finance minister and join us this morning. So clearly what he says is that the next government will go back to the job of solving problems. The problems that are being left behind. Huge ones, of course. Are this the biggest you've ever seen?
Yes, it's the worst. Because, of course, since independence, has any government defaulted?
It's the worst.
Has anybody defaulted?
Worse than the
Has
PNDC
any
era?
government defaulted? At least within default, it was forgiven. When people ask me, is it worse than the PNC era, I say that we have no business being where we are now as a country.
You have no business at all.
No, because how much endowments did Rollins have to do all those corrections? And here we are with 2 oil fields, gold prices, high at a point and all of that. We brought the economy to this stage. And then we are making more promises. No, we have no business being where we are.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Well, the Good Morning Conversation team is back tomorrow with another edition of the show. Stay tuned. It's the mid-morning show that's coming up next.
Right,
one station. Accra 2022, 23, 24, and more. We don't chat, bad drama. Back live. Commercial free. Just mid-morning show.